The neighborhood of SoHo is New York City's largest shopping district. The name SoHo is an acronym for South of Houston, and you can trust that the neighborhood just north of Houston is NoHo. And though it's spelt the same way as the big city in Texas, Houston, it is Houston Street. If you said you were hanging out on Houston Street, we got your number in a second. But you've been hanging out with me, so you know what's up. Houston, Texas is named for Sam Houston, mid-19th century soldier and politician, and actually the only Southern governor that refused to take an oath of allegiance to the Confederacy. Houston Street is named for William Houston, a Scottish name with an extra U at the end. Houston married the daughter of a very prominent New Yorker back in 1788, and he got a street named after him. The U was eventually lost. The name SoHo was coined in 1963 and popularized in the 1970s. But before it was SoHo, it was called Hell's 100 Acres. Back in the Dutch days of New Amsterdam, this was actually all farmland and the location of Manhattan's first free black settlement. The population began to rise here after the draining and landfilling of the polluted Collect Pond that was isolating this area from the rest of the city, completed in 1811. With the growth of population in the 19th century came the need for entertainment. This became the red light and theater district. All kinds of theaters lined Broadway between Houston and Canal. And that's actually why we call New York City's highest caliber of theater Broadway. You can have a Broadway theater blocks away from the street Broadway, and you can have off-Broadway theaters on Broadway. Times Square didn't even exist until 1904. By the end of the 19th century, residencies continued moving uptown, and this neighborhood was mostly textile factories. New York City was really industrial all the way through World War II. After the war, the factories needed space to expand, and this neighborhood was close to vacated. Now we get an example of the circle of life that can happen in any city, anywhere around the world. A neighborhood becomes affordable for whatever reason. The young people and the artists can afford to move in. They make the area so hip and cool they can't afford to live here anymore, and all the rich people and the businesses move in. That's exactly what happened here in SoHo, the Village, Brooklyn. It's happening up in Harlem, and it will continue forever. So this was a major location for the art scene from the 1960s through the 80s. Andy Warhol's factory was actually never here in SoHo. It was in Midtown, then came to Union Square, about a half mile uptown of where we are right now. There's still art galleries around here, but mostly what we find is retail on the bottom and offices and loft apartments up above. The loft apartment is arguably created here in SoHo. You take a factory floor and convert it into a residency. Lots of space and lots of natural light through the big windows. SoHo is also known as the Cast Iron Historic District. The Hofwout building is the crown jewel of cast iron architecture. It dates back to 1857 and was home to the Hofwout Emporium, which manufactured and sold china, silverware, cut glass, and chandeliers. In fact, Mary Todd Lincoln, First Lady to President Abraham Lincoln, spent $3,000 here buying new china for the White House. That's a lot of cash for the mid-19th century. This is also the location of the first successful steam-powered commercial passenger elevator with safety features. This cast iron building on Prince Street was the location for Sam and Molly's apartment in the movie Ghost. At one point in the film, Molly, played by Demi Moore, calls the police. She says she's on Prince Street between Green and Mercer, across from the post office. The post office is now an Apple store. Cast iron architecture was especially popular for buildings in America from the 1840s to the 1880s because of how incredibly inexpensive it was to build a gorgeous building. You could literally order a building out of a catalog. Once the design was set, a cast molding would be made using a copper iron alloy, hence cast iron architecture, which means that magnets stick to these buildings. This copper iron alloy has a very low melting temperature, which makes it very fast and easy to make these very detailed facades. You can see these details on the trim columns and archways of the buildings. If these buildings were stone, it would take a lot more work and time to get aesthetics like this. The problem with using a metal with a low melting temperature is that if a fire breaks out, the whole facade could melt away and the buildings would collapse. They spent a lot of time and money making these buildings safe, and I'm glad they did. Now, if we rewind back to the 1950s, when this area was vacated and all the buildings prone to fire, the fire department calls it Hell's 100 Acres. We don't call it that anymore, but if you find an engine from ladder 20 here in SoHo, you'll see printed on the side, Hell's 100 Acres. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to catch our next episodes and check out a previous episode here. See you real soon.